broke into a metal shipping container causing damage. They removed items but did not take them, so I thought that they were probably disturbed in the act and sort of made off without any items that they'd taken. And yeah, that's the latest. Any questions or anything?
Anyone got any questions, Councillor West?
Yeah, referring back to our public speaker a minute ago, okay, can you have the crime prevention officer come to the office and talk to the office about our building that was broken into through the roof, please, so we can see, because if the resident is concerned about the cost of a burglar alarm, okay, lo and behold, whatever we can do to make sure they don't get into that building. It's a proper brick building with a slated roof, okay, so they got in through the roof accordingly. So we'll take whatever advice your crime prevention officer can give us to make sure that we reduce the risk of anything that belongs to town council being stolen again, including smart water. Right?
Any more for anyone?
Any more questions for Joe? No? Thank you, Joe. You're welcome to stay on.
No.
Hasty retreat.
Night, everyone.
Good night, Dan. Night. Okay, agenda item 10 is reports from Central Bedfordshire Council representatives. We only have Richard here tonight, but I'm sure he'll do an admirable job anyway. Make up for the
Thank you,
shortfall
Chairman. So the main item of news from Central Bedfordshire is that the budget has been approved by full council, and as expected, that means that Central Bedfordshire's share of the council tax will remain the same as last year, without affecting the amounts that we'll be investing in frontline services. And additionally, whilst the first work is actually going to go on in the south, we will be building social housing as a council for the first time in more than 20 years, starting with extra care facilities for old people in Dunstable, where there are plans to roll that out across the area. So I'm hopeful in the next year we will see a site identified in Biggleswade, and that's as a result of very careful management of the housing revenue account that will generate millions of pounds over the next 5 years to invest in new council housing. Also, as far as Arlesey is concerned, the precept was approved as you'd requested. So again, that's a nil rise in the Band D amount for the Arlesey council tax. So I hope it's come out as you planned, with no surprises. The one area that will cause perhaps some confusion is that you may have heard that the police budget, which forms part of the overall council tax and is set by Ollie Martin, the Police and Crime Commissioner, is scheduled to go up by 15.8%. And that triggers a referendum, which means that in addition to the 3 ballot papers that you will get on May the 7th, so for the general election, the Central Bedfordshire elections, and I assume a town and parish election, there will be a 4th piece of paper for the referendum on whether you want to approve or not this proposal for the 15.8% rise in the police precept. If it's not approved, it will revert to a 1.99% rise, and residents will then be rebilled with the lower amount sometime during the first quarter. So there'll be lots of different coloured bits of paper to fill in on election day. Next of interest, perhaps for Arlesey, a new Councillor Code of Conduct Complaints Seminar is taking place. This is a one-off event for town and parish clerks to discuss the processes related to handling Councillor Code of Conduct complaints, and will take place on the 19th of March at Priory House. And the aims are to assist town and parish councils in managing the majority of cases of complaints at a local level, to identify best practice, and also to explain the revised CBC process where cases need to be reported to the monitoring officer. I think it's planned that this training will be rerun for new councillors as well after the elections in May, so some of you aspiring to office may wish to make a note of that. The Chairman mentioned the rollout of superfast broadband, which is one of my responsibilities at Central Bedfordshire. Millions of pounds of funding into Central Bedfordshire to support that. Phase 1 is on track. We will announce the results of Phase 2, which is another investment of £7 million in the next couple of months. Arlesey already benefits by and large from access to commercial superfast broadband. I'm very interested to hear if there are areas in the town that don't receive superfast.
There are. Where I live. BT of cable Arlesey, and the street furniture says that it's there, but from about Howbury Green south, they haven't commissioned it yet. And it's taken me about 6 months to get hold of someone to give me a date when that may happen. And they very reluctantly told me it's at least a year away. So if there's anything you can do to leverage that, because it's only a little bit of kit.
Well, if you can just let me know the details after the meeting, because I didn't write them down. I'll talk with the area director, who I know, and see if we can be brought forward.
While you're on the broadband, Park Gothic Way cannot get Virgin, because Virgin is one side.
I'm coming to that, Councillor West. Okay, please. So also I'm meeting the Minister responsible for the digital economy in Westminster tomorrow to push for more funding to cover these spots where we don't get coverage, and also to push the case for improving our mobile access across the county, which is particularly bad in many areas. And whilst 4G is starting to be rolled out in Arlesey, we still have too many dead spots, particularly along major roads like the 507 and so on. And there is government funding being put forward for that. Now, just coming to Virgin, obviously the rollout of cable stopped many years ago when the funds ran out. But last month, Virgin announced an investment of several £1 billion to upgrade parts of their network and to fill in spots in the existing network. Obviously there are parts of Arlesey that might benefit from that funding. There is a website, a link on the Virgin website, something called Cable My Street, and I would encourage any residents in Arlesey that want to pressure to get the Virgin network extended to sign up to that service to show their interest. Is that something you're aware of, Councillor Holloway?
I didn't realise
take an interest in that.
Incomplete.
And I have asked for Central Beverages to write to town and parish clerks to make them aware of that, to put information out through local media. Mr Watson, you mentioned salt bins. CBC provide 3 tonnes of salt free every year to local towns and parish councils that request it, and that can be used either for general gritting or to replenish salt bins, and further supplies can be purchased if required. And lastly, I must give my apologies next week for the annual parish meeting, I'm afraid. It clashes with another parish council meeting that I need to attend. So obviously if there are any questions that arise there and another ward councillor can't answer them, please pass them on to me by email.
Councillor West, questions for Richard?
Yeah, I've got 2, I'm afraid. One is something called the housing pool. I don't know if you've heard about the housing pool, where areas what are deemed to be affluent are put money into the pot for areas that are deemed not to be affluent. And one of the biggest areas that are taking money in is Birmingham, hand over fist. It's called the housing pool, where councils pay in to the housing pool. How will that affect us? So if you don't know, to say I don't know, I've never heard of it, because it is something very few people have heard of. Okay, and the other thing is, on the news at lunchtime today about, I don't know if you saw that, a number of people at Oxford, just under 300 young women and girls have been sexually groomed in Oxfordshire, and there's a big inquest. Is there anything, can we make sure this doesn't happen within our area, please?
Well, your first point about the housing pool is that I'm personally not aware of how that works. I do know that the housing revenue account will be run within Central Bedfordshire, which is effectively money that we now control. We had to take on £160 million of debt to buy the council housing stock we had locally. Means that we now control that, and because of careful financial management of that debt, we've generated a surplus so far of £10 million, which has been rolled back into improving and expanding the social housing stock. And that is essentially contained within the county. So that's not money that's pooled centrally. There are separate central government schemes that provide funding to housing associations for housing. So that's all I can comment on that. As regards abuse, clearly that's something that not only I think we all regard as absolutely dreadful, and unfortunately this isn't the first instance, obviously, of it occurring. We've seen that in northern councils. Central Bedfordshire is not complacent. It's been in discussion with its other neighbouring authorities, particularly Luton and Bedford. One of the reasons that the Police and Crime Commissioner is putting forward a proposal for an increased precept is to fund 30 additional officers to explicitly monitor and investigate allegations of child sexual exploitation, to ensure that any suggestions are investigated thoroughly. So I think at the moment there's no evidence, certainly that I'm aware of, but clearly it's been taken very seriously by the local authorities involved, and it's obviously a very high priority for children's services.
Any more questions for Councillor Wayne? Thank you, Richard. Agenda item 11 is the school and nursery government reports. Have there been any? No? Mark's not here as expected. Moving on then to 12, which is finance. 12A is the income and expenditure for October 14. I think the first three are all retrospective, November 14 and December 14. This was a result of a request from Councillor Baines to provide additional information, which I believe Leslie has attempted to do, despite the fact she's obviously been up to her eyes in work. So you should have a copy of a sheet that says expenditure codes with no budget. That is the first thing that was requested. What was the second thing was? Yeah, you want to say what?
Councillor Baines wanted indicated on the payment schedule who had signed the payments, and that is attached to the back of your income and expenditure.
So, if I may, Gersh I have had a chat with Gersh, and he was asking, yeah, I can see the check has been signed. He was asking about this, and maybe he didn't know about this.
I managed to do that today, so
that's
it
right. Okay. So I think you'll be pleased to see that. The one thing that we had no visibility of, he was asking about, are the check signatories, are they signing off the invoices that those checks are being paid for? Happy days. That's fine. So the only thing that's outstanding
is that covered? What's the third thing you use?
bank interest rate.
Yeah.
Is that later?
Come on to that later. Yeah, so in the light of that information that you've now been provided with, can we cover off those three income and expenditures for those months? Yeah. Is that four? The one in January as well, which obviously was held over because of the same request. Yeah? Okay. Yeah. Then move on to petty cash, which is 12E. To receive for approval copies of the petty cash details for the resource centre and the town council for month 10.
Recommend approval, Mr. Chair.
Second for that? Thank you. Councillor 12F. Okay, there's two parts to this. The first one is to approve the financial assistance application from Fairfield Bowls Club to award a donation of £500 to enable pathways and green edges to be repaired as recommended by the GP and Finance Committee meeting on the 17th of February. Okay, I mean, that's a recommendation from that committee. I wasn't at that meeting. I have been contacted by a resident who expressed disapproval that such a large amount would be handed to Fairfield Park, even though some Arlesey residents do use the facility. So I don't know what you think, but I think that's far too much money, £500. So, you know, it's been approved, it's been recommended by the GP and Finance.
Mr. Chair, the gentleman, the chairman of that group came to the GP and gave a presentation, and it wasn't, I understand it wasn't just for the areas that are to the greens there. I believe there was some public access on a piece of land to the side of what the greens are as well. I'm sorry he's not here tonight, otherwise he could have given you more information himself. So,
I was at that meeting and I actually put forward the sum of 500. What I've heard the residents, I think it should be lowered. I think a figure of £100 is probably realistic enough. I think 500 is too much.
I think it's far too much, considering the situation that we're in at the moment. But I mean, you know, at the end of the day, we can vote on it.
I would go for 250 because it's a large project they're working on. They do need to raise a lot of money. And there are, like, there has been, historically, there's been Arlesey folk have bowled up there for decades.
if you propose it, Mick, I'll second it.
I propose, a modification to your proposal to 250?
Anybody else? Councillor White, Councillor Frost, have you got anything you wish to add?
I'm also wanting to see the presentation, so I'm lying on this one.
Councillor Frost, I think, was you the chairman of that committee?
Yeah, I was chair. I'll go with Mick, 250. I mean, it's sort of in between, isn't it? And it is going to benefit the people of Arlesey as well.
Okay, so we're more or less in agreement then. The reduction is 250.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Good. And then 12F2 is to approve the financial assistance application from Arlesey Good Neighbour Support Scheme to cover costs of printing leaflets. Maintaining the phone and minor stationery is recommended by the same committee on the 17th of February. Obviously there's been a presentation from the lady about that tonight.
Mr. Chair.
That was for £500 as an ongoing thing, but this would be just voting on a one-off.
Mr. Chair, as they've already been explained tonight, that there's large cost involved in this group and they're doing a lot for the elderly and disabled within the community, can I suggest that the 250 we've just saved from the bowls, we actually give to them and therefore they get the 750?
It's not quite the same, is it?
It's not saying at all then.
No, we just had a presentation from the lady. We just had a presentation from the lady saying about the last thing she wants to do is pull the plug on a...
What I would say to that is we can discuss any further support we offer on an ongoing basis when we come to another agenda item, which I referred to earlier, the village agent. I think that'd be a good opportunity to talk about that then as well. So shall we stick to £500 for that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Councillor White.
Unfortunately, I missed that. I take it she will be a legitimate set-up charity with accounts.
Well,
like.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously going to benefit.
It's run through BRCC, which is Bedfordshire Rural Charities Commission.
Okay. As long as it's accountable, you can't give money to anybody.
If you want to suspend standing orders for a second, if you get an answer from one of the senior players, there's still someone in the room.
Okay. Agree with that, councillors?
Yeah.
Okay, over to you, young man.
Is that okay? Yeah, thank you. Made my day. Yes, it has been established as a not-for-profit organisation. We have to have legitimate accounts and we will have a bookkeeper. And yes, we'll submit those every year for you to see.
Okay, so £500 for that. Okay.
Mr. Chair, we now need to reinstate standing orders.
Yeah. Agreed. 12G. St Peter's Church Quiz Night to approve the hire charges. To approve that the hire charge be waived for the fundraising quiz night event being held by St Peter's Church in this village hall as recommended by the Property Committee meeting at the 17th of February.
Mr Chair, I'd like to propose that because St Peter's Church don't charge us for the civic service, so I think it's only good that we respond to them by giving them a facility so that they can raise some funds for their church. Yep. So I would like to propose that motion, Mr Chair.
That's already been.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone in agreement with that? Yeah. And finally, 12H, right, bank interest rates. I spent half a day on the phone and going into various banks in the local area, and the best interest rate that I can come up with for the funds that we have and the funds that we could invest is 0.05%, which is what we're currently achieving with Barclays Bank. I contacted one that had been recommended to me by a resident who was adamant and has been going on about this for quite a while that we can get a much better rate at Scottish Widows. Scottish Widows would not be able to entertain us opening an account with them because we do not fulfil the criteria that they're looking for their clients. We have to be a charitable organisation, and we're not. So, in the light of the fact that Lloyds, Barclays and NatWest cannot offer anything better than 0.5%, I can't see that I can actually recommend anything other than to leave things as they are at the moment, unless anyone else has got any suggestions.
Mr Chair.
Councillor West.
And while our ward councillors here, I don't know where CBC have their money, okay, and what interest rates they get. So will it be possible to find out from CBC and also the rate that they're getting? So could we defer this until next month and then get Richard an opportunity to get information from CBC Finance?
The information about treasury management is in the public domain, and in fact the treasury management policy was approved at full council on an annual basis at the last meeting last Thursday, and that details the banks and the approximate interest rates that we achieved, which are somewhere in the region currently of 0.4% on investment funds.
That's a lot more than 0.05.
Obviously we're investing considerably more than Arlesey Town Council. I mean, perhaps also useful that Stondon Parish Council debated this issue last month, and they found a business deposit account in line with their existing current account arrangements, which will pay 0.3% on the basis of, I think, 3 months' notice. And I do know that Henlow Parish Council do bank with Scottish Widows and achieve, I can't remember the exact interest rate, but somewhere between 0.3 and 0.5% on their funds on a 7-day notice basis. So I mean, it may be that your assistant clerk should contact the clerks of the 2 local parish councils and perhaps ask for their arrangements.
Is Henlow Council a registered charity?
No, it's a public organisation.
I'm not quite sure whether the funds that they invested were for a special project.
No, they're just general balances.
Just general balances. I rang them twice, actually, Scottish Widows, spoke to 2 different people. The problem nowadays is you cannot go into any high street bank and meet a business manager. You have to, every time you go in, they give you a phone number to ring. I came back, actually, Councillor Holloway was visited the office in the afternoon that I was doing this, and I ended up with earache basically because I was on the phone for so long without getting any of the answers that I wanted to hear. But in the end, that was the findings that I came to.
If you'd like to suspend standing orders for 1 minute, Chairman, Councillor Shelby from Henlow Parish Council is here. He dealt with the original investments for Henlow Parish Council.
Okay, so we suspend standing orders, please. Yeah. Councillor Shelby.
It's a Scottish Widows Bank as opposed to Scottish Widows. So I don't know if you were talking to Scottish Widows or the bank, which is a separate part of the organisation.
Do you remember what he was?
I mean, we haven't moved it for some time, so if they've changed their requirements, I don't know, but this was set up about 4 years ago, 3.5, 4 years ago.
They changed.
I think they've
What you
changed.
get, what you get last week, you only
Yeah, I think they've changed because I actually told them that a neighbouring council had got this. and
No,
they
I
said
just
that
checked
they
that
don't-
it's
that's not something that they do currently.
Yeah, I'll just check it is Scottish Widows Bank
Yeah.
rather than the actual Scottish Widows, because they do take deposits for Scottish Widows, which is obviously the insurance arm of it. Worth a check.
Can I just...
Yes?
Just,
Yeah.
I mentioned it to my husband who works for Royal Bank of Canada, that you only got 0.5%, and he was not surprised. He said it's different to Joe Bloggs having money in the bank.
Yeah.
Completely different. You won't get the high rates of interest on a...
I mean, I believe when I started on the council many, many years ago, 10 years ago, we were earning thousands of pounds interest.
No.
But nowadays, we barely make 100.
He wasn't at all surprised that that's all we get.
But I think you should aspire to get at least 0.25, 0.3 is possible. Because certainly Stondon are going to achieve 0.3 on their arrangements that they agreed just last month.
We'll contact Stondon.
I would suggest that if your clerk contacts Stondon Clark and Henlow Clark, you can get the full details.
There are a couple of new kids on the block in terms of business banking at the moment. Santander are really trying to grow their presence. And I know they have business bankers in the store. But also there's a new one called Metro Bank that are really cracking business accounts. They may be receptive because they're trying to grow as fast as they can.
I did ask the Scottish Widows person I spoke to whether the rate that we were currently getting was competitive, and she said that she did say to me, doesn't matter where you go, you get nothing better than that. That's what she said to me. Because I said to her, how many more banks am I going to ring up and ask this same question to? She said, you're wasting your time really, because that's what the current situation is. I mean, NatWest were almost half what we're getting from Barclays. So, we'll make further inquiries, but that is the latest situation on that. Okay. We'll reinstate standing orders now. If that's,
Mr. Chair,
yeah.
can we not look possible looking at something whereby we have to give a 90-day notice and therefore get a bigger interest rate by giving a longer notice?